Well, it stopped raining, only rained for a couple of minutes. The sun's come out and I've found a nice secluded little spot down here on this urban beach at the side of the pond. So we've got the wood gas stove on and we've got a brew coming together. And sometimes when I bring my fire kit down, it's a bit of a lucky dip of what sort of brew I'm going to have. I've got all sorts of little bits and bobs of tea bags, and today the one that I've pulled out is a chai tea bag. So I'm going to have black chai. It's usually nice with a bit of cream and sugar in, but I'm not bothered. I quite like the spiciness of it. And it'll be ready in a minute. I mean, that wood gas stove's only been on 2 minutes, but the wind's helping things along, and like I say, the sun's out and it's a lovely, lovely, lovely day. So yeah, back to this warped world that we're living in. And one of the things in the internet age that has become particularly evil, well, an easy thing to manipulate, has been using social media to spread disinformation. So if somebody puts something on having a go at a certain group of people, by the time it's been sussed out that it's bullshit, whether it's made up or that it's an outright lie, enough people have seen it where they're likely to believe it. And it's a very, very dangerous thing. This is a very dangerous thing. People have been attacked because of this. People have had to move out of the homes because they believe bullshit that they read online. And it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. I'm prepared for whatever's to come. I don't want to sound like a mad paranoid prepper, but I can forage. I know where to get food from. I know where to get water from, to clean water, grow food. I've got good community links, and for the type of future that we want away from all this separatism, we really need to be community building, because you can't have a future with just loads of individuals running around like predators helping themselves. It won't work. It'll be a far worse world than we've got now. So that's enough of that for the minute, and I'm just going to fill the stove up a little bit with more wood and then enjoy my brew. And here we have it, good people. The water's boiling and I've really only used a small handful of wood, so it's time for a brew. And we've got our cup with a chai tea bag in. And there we go. So while I have my brew, just let this burn down. It'll probably burn down in a matter of 3 or 4 minutes. And I've just been looking at this here, how it's got this little indent. And I think what I'm going to do in the winter, I think I'm going to put a tarp across there like that, and I'm going to put my sleeping bag under there and sleep under it. And then if I want to do any cooking, not that anybody's going to be about in the dark of night, but if I want to do any cooking, none of the local farms will see fires because it's below ground level. So yeah, great little spot to be used, this. And like I say, these places are absolute gold dust, these little sort of rural enclaves that are near council estates and built up urban areas. And I've said this in many of my videos, but if you're not feeling good, these are the places to get out to. I mean, if you've been cooped up in a house for 3 or 4 days feeling a bit pissed off and depressed, it's not a very natural environment. Humans were part of nature. So if you come out here, this is more our habitat than a house made out of bricks and a steel frame. Then you're likely to get more beneficial things happening than if you were trapped between 4 walls. And this was one of the things when I was 19, when I was a punk rocker. I wasn't very happy with the way work life is sold to you, and it just seemed like the whole thing was a con. That you leave school, you get a job. I mean, it's an old cliche now, you work your fucking arse off, you retire, you get your pocket watch, and then you die. And that wasn't for me at all, and I decided, and it was one of the great things of being a punk rocker, it gave you that space to think about stuff and to think about alternatives and living differently. And I first went to Stonehenge. I walked out of a job, a shitty job. Luckily I'd been paid in the morning, and I went to Stonehenge Festival, and then I went to loads of other free festivals all over summer, and I did the same thing the following year. And for the next decade, sort of on and off, I spent time, lived on a few traveller sites. A lot of the time though, I was quite happy with solitude, so I used to get a tent and I used to bugger off to Wales and stay in different woodlands, mountainous areas until it was found, and then move on somewhere else. And I just had a couple of pans with me, used to cook on open fires, used to go playing penny whistle in local towns and villages, get a couple of quid, buy some veggies, maybe a bottle of wine, go back to the woods. And to me, that was a life. Doing that was a life, because all the jobs have been absolutely piss boring, repetitive, low paid crap. And your life's not worth living sometimes when you're in a situation like that. But rather than taking your life because of something that's been imposed on you, people should walk the fuck away from it. And if it's a bit difficult for a bit, stay determined, stay focused on creating your own life where there's a bit of adventure. Become resilient, do things on your terms. It's doable. There's hundreds of thousands of people, or perhaps even millions nowadays, who live their own way. Sure, everybody has to work in some form or other, but you can mould work around how you want to live if you're smart about it. And I've just noticed while I've been drinking my brew, there's these lovely little birds. They look like swallows, but I'm not very well up, sadly and shamefully, I'm not very well up on some British birds. I know a few, but they're showing quite a lot of interest in this pond. There's about half a dozen of them. I don't know if you can make them out on this camcorder, but there's definitely something interesting them in the water for sure. They keep ducking down and diving in. And sod's law, just as I've started filming them, they've all buggered off. I'm sure they'll be back. Yeah, something else I'd like to talk about as well is the idea of a home and a house and what people perceive as homes. So there's a housing crisis in this country. I'm not going to go on about causes because there's quite a few causes, and I'm not particularly interested in that. What I'm interested in is the response of some people. So I think there's roughly around 800,000 people living in vans and some in caravans, and this is pretty similar really. I mean, when I went on the road in some of the 80s and bits of the 90s, they were called travellers, which is quite an obvious term. That's what you are. You travel, you live in a van, a yurt, a bender or whatever, and you travel to places, you live in different places. So the contemporary manifestation are Vanlifers. Sounds a bit American to me, but each to their own. But there's an awful lot of people living in vans, and people have sort of had time to prepare for it, and they've decided that they're sick of paying ridiculous rents, and they've saved up over a year or so, kitted themselves a van out with solar panels. Some have put wood burning stoves in, and you've got these sort of off-grid vans that people have put together or bought. And there's this army of van lifers, I'll call them travellers because that's what they are, who are living all over the show in the UK. And interestingly, I watched a YouTube documentary around the area of Glastonbury in Somerset, and there's loads of caravan dwellers living on roadsides. And I think basically, and it's probably a good thing for the caravan dwellers, there's that many of them. I don't think the police have the capacity to do what they did to the travellers in the 80s, to trash the vehicles, the caravans, beat them up and move them on. I don't think they've got the capacity, because there's that many people now living in caravans and vehicles. And it's a similar thing in Bristol, and it's quite acute really in Bristol. There's thousands of vehicles parked on the downs, parked in the more sort of anarchic areas of the city, around sort of Gloucester Road area, Easton, and then there's loads of caravans as well on the very outskirts of Bristol, just as you're driving into the centre. I forget the name of it. I should know actually, because I lived in Bristol for nearly 4 years and spent a lot of time there when I was a traveller in the 80s, but for various reasons you forget the name of some of the roads and areas. But there's a huge amount of people in Bristol living in caravans and vehicles, and some of it's to do with the housing crisis, because quite a lot of the people who live in vans are working. They've got jobs in the city of Bristol. Some are teachers, social workers, whatever, but they're all working, and then they don't go to a house at the end of the day, they go to a van. And you can understand this really. I mean, if you're earning say £2 a month, it's not a massive salary. It's okay for the north of England where I'm based. So if you're earning £2 a month, you don't want to be shelling over half of it out for a flat. Absolutely ridiculous. It makes working pointless. So there's this necessity of people have got fucked off with paying these rents, and they've hit the road. And to me it's a very exciting thing, because I always knew after the 80s and 90s, when the original wave of travellers and the punks and the anarchists and everything sort of disappeared, many went abroad, some still stayed on the road in the UK, kept out of the way of the police, but you sort of had an idea, because of the economics that we're all subjected to, and we are subjected to it, that the travelling life would be back. And me and probably many other people knew that it was only a matter of time before it came back, and it's back with vigour now. I mean, I dare say there's probably 2 or 3 times the amount of people living on the road in vans than there was in say the late 70s and the 80s, when the original traveller movement was gathering momentum. And I like it, because it's a fertile thing for alternative thinking and for people trying things out and new ideas. And that's how we're going to get from A to B. We're not going to get from A to B using the same selfish, destructive economic model that's been kicking about since the era of Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. That's dead, that thing. Although its corpse is still putting a big fight up, but that economic thing is dead. And we don't want to let bankers and economists decide what the future of economy is going to be like. We can do that ourselves. mean, I do it in my own way up to a certain extent, and I'm a 60-year-old bloke. But there's loads and loads of people who are using the noggins, and they're as I mentioned before, that they're trying out these multiple income streams. They're independent from the machine. All right, they pay tax. Everybody has to pay tax, and you have to pay your NI. I don't think a lot of people have got problems with that, really. You know, basically, I think people value the services that the tax and their NI pays for. So, as much as it's a dark time with a lot of very sort of rigid thinking and discrimination of various sorts going on, it's also a very fertile era as well, because of all of these alternative ideas and people trying things out, and things coming to fruition. And over the last few years I've been writing a lot of this down, because I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but I've lived quite an interesting and varied life that stemmed really from the independent thinking and the DIY ethos of punk rock. And I've been writing all this down, and don't worry, this isn't a trailer to sell a book, although I am writing a book. Initially I was writing a permaculture book, but it's a lot wider than permaculture. It's about punk rock, it's about DIY culture, it's about permaculture, it's about anarchism, it's about living differently. And I've been writing this for I've probably got about 80,000 words, so I've virtually got a book, and I've got thousands of pictures. And I've recently started thinking about a title, and it was going to be something like Resistance is Fertile, Punk Rock, Permaculture and Community Food. I haven't settled on the title. I've not even started looking for publishers yet, and the style that I'm writing it, I want it to be accessible to everybody. So imagine you're describing something that's very objective and factual, but you're writing it in prose style. And I want people to really enjoy it when they're reading it. If it gets to people actually reading it, I want them to maybe feel inspired by it and think, well, fuck it, I'm going to go out and do something. So that's how I've written it. I've not written it in an academic style at all. I won't be using like Harvard referencing or anything like that, because that's not where it's at. If I wanted to write an academic book, I'm sure I probably could do, but that's not where it's at. And I don't think the nature of this book that I've got in mind, it's about life being an anarchic adventure, and about living differently, and about looking at things differently. And I think if you're describing something that's an adventure, then it should be written in prose, and it is going to be peppered with bits of poetry and, you know, some of my private thoughts that I've had over the decades. But anyway, that's enough of my non-book plug. So back to my brew, and back to taking in this lovely fresh air and the gentle water drops landing on the pond.